All right, let's do a deep dive into Microvita, shall we? You sent in a bunch of material on this, and wow, it's a lot to digest.
I know, right?
It's dense, but hey, that's what we do here, right? We try to unpack these complex ideas and find the good stuff hidden inside.
Yeah, I agree.
And Microvita seem like they bridge this gap between science, the hard science stuff, and spiritual wisdom.
Yeah.
Which is always something that I find really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the material that you sent is, it's some of the most interesting stuff that I've seen on the topic. Like, it feels like we're about to uncover, like, a whole hidden world that's right here with us.
Yeah, okay, so let's back up for a second and start with the basics. What are Microvita?
Well, the term itself can be a little misleading. I think it's easy to think of them like cells or bacteria or something like that.
Yeah.
But they actually exist on a much more subtle level. In fact, at the source, Microvitum in a nutshell, they actually argue that we should be using the term microvitum instead of virus because virus is too vague. They're really more like fundamental units of energy or consciousness and kind of exist between like matter and pure energy.
Okay, so not quite physical, but not quite ethereal either.
Right.
That's a tough one.
It is, but think of it this way. Everything in the universe is energy, right?
Right.
From the tiniest little atom all the way up to a massive galaxy.
Yeah.
And you can think of Microvita as like the little building blocks of that energy, the little sparks that make life and consciousness possible.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of it. So if these Microvita are the building blocks of life, where can we find them?
Well, this is where it gets really exciting. I mean, they're not just limited to Earth or even our solar system. The sources point to them existing everywhere, in planets, stars, nebulae, even throughout galaxies.
Everywhere. So we're literally like swimming in a sea of Microvita.
That's the idea.
Wow. And it makes you wonder, if they're that widespread, how do they get around?
Right. You can't just hop in a spaceship if you're, this tiny little unit of energy.
Exactly. And that's why the sources suggest that Microvita can travel through these things called inferences. So think about it like this. When you listen to the radio, you're picking up information that's carried on radio waves, right?
Right.
Microvita can basically hitch a ride on various forms of energy, like sound, touch, smell, even our thoughts.
Wait, so someone's thoughts can carry Microvita?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. So does that mean, like, my thoughts could be impacting the world on a much deeper level than I ever realized?
That's the idea. Yeah. It suggests that we're all interconnected in ways that, we're just beginning to understand.
Yeah.
And it gets even more interesting when we start to consider that there are actually different types of Microvita.
Oh, here we go. I feel like there's a but coming. There's more to the story, right?
Yep.
There is. Not all Microvita are the same. The sources talk about positive and negative Microvita, each with their own effects on living beings and the world around us.
So like a yin and yang of Microvita, the good and the bad.
Exactly. Positive Microvitas are associated with growth, healing, creativity, spiritual development, all that good stuff. They're kind of like the forces behind evolution, and they support life.
I got it. So the negative ones, I'm guessing those aren't so good.
Yeah, unfortunately not. They're linked to things like disease and negativity and even things on a bigger scale, like, problems in society. They cause a disruption of harmony and just create imbalance, both in individuals and on a larger scale.
Okay, this is a lot. So we've got these tiny units of energy, both good and bad, swirling around us, inside of us. It's kind of mind-blowing, but also a little scary, if I'm honest.
I know, it is, but that's what makes it so interesting, right? And makes us rethink what we know about life and the universe and how we see our own experiences.
I totally agree. So if these Microvita are all around us, influencing us in all these ways, is there anything we can do about it? I mean, do we just kind of sit back and let them run the show?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And the sources do offer some insights into how we might be able to influence the balance of Microvita in us and in the world around us.
Okay, now we're talking. I'm interested in this. So what can we do? How do we tap into the good stuff and maybe, like, minimize the bad stuff?
Well, the sources point to our choices, specifically the things we eat, our thoughts, and our spiritual practices. They say that those play a huge role in shaping our Microvita landscape.
Okay, I'm all ears. So what kind of food? Does this mean I need to become like a raw vegan or something?
Not necessarily.
Okay, good.
But the source does talk about the difference between carbonic and non-carbonic food.
Okay.
Carbonic food is basically your typical, dense processed foods.
Right.
They're great for building physical structures,
But
but
there's a catch.
there's a bit of a catch. Imagine if you just focused on building a house, but didn't think about who was going to live there or what they were going to use it for. You might end up with a strong building, but would it really be a home?
Right. I see what you're saying. So the non-carbonic foods would be...
Think light, pure, things that nourish not just your body, but also your mind and spirit. They're seen as promoting a more balanced flow of energy and supporting the good microvita.
Okay, I see the connection. But what about thoughts? How do they tie into all of this?
Well, it comes back to those inferences we were talking about. Our thoughts create vibrations, and those vibrations can actually act as carriers for the microvita. So positive, expansive thoughts are going to attract positive microvita, while negative, fearful thoughts are going to do the opposite.
So if I'm constantly stressing out, looking at all the bad news online and just focusing on the negative, I'm basically inviting those bad microvita to, like, set up camp in my head.
Kind of, yeah. You're creating an environment where they can thrive. But on the flip side, when we focus on positive thoughts, gratitude, a sense of peace, then we're creating fertile ground for those good microvita to do their thing.
Okay, I'm definitely going to have to work on my mental hygiene then.
Mhm.
What about spiritual practices? Where do they fit in?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The source talks about these siddha devayonis. Think of them like highly evolved, very positive microvita.
Okay.
They act as guides and protectors. They kind of help us along on our spiritual journeys.
Like little microvita mentors.
Mm.
I like that. Tell me more about these siddha devayonis. What are they like? How do they interact with us?
Well, one of the sources shares a story about a professor and his wife, and they were protected by this yakini city, a powerful microvitum.
Okay.
It even intervened and stopped a thief and saved their granddaughter from an accident that could have been fatal.
Microvita saving lives. That's
Yeah.
wild.
It is. And there's a whole system for classifying these devyonis. They each have their own unique qualities and areas of influence.
Okay, so we got to talk more about these devayonis. This is really cool, but I think we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part.
We have, but we're just getting started with this microvita journey. There's so much more to talk about.
I can't wait. So we'll leave you with this. If our thoughts, the food we eat, and our spiritual practices can all influence the microvita around us, what choices will you make to create a more positive and vibrant world for yourself and for everyone around you?
That's a great question.
It is, and we'll be back soon to continue exploring this fascinating world of microvita.
See you then. Welcome back to our exploration of microvita. I'm still thinking about those siddha devayonis and their incredible abilities.
Me too. It's wild. It's amazing how this concept of microvita, it can be both grounded in science, but also almost mystical at the same time.
Right.
But before we get too deep into those cities, you mentioned some pretty strange creatures last time, like a cobra that smells like rice and one with a dessert-like aroma. What was that all about?
Yes, the Gandasarpa and the Gandagokula. Their unique scents are a really important part of understanding how microvita can be transmitted and even cultivated in the natural world.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's unpack that a bit. First, the Gandasarpa, the rice-scented cobra. What's the connection to microvita?
Well, the source says that these creatures, even though they seem ordinary, they give off a fragrance that acts as a carrier for specific types of microvita. It kind of challenges how we usually think about the senses working, you know? Like, smell isn't just about whether something smells good or bad. It can actually be a way to transmit these subtle energies.
So instead of thinking about good smells or bad smells, we should be thinking about what kind of microvita they might be carrying. That's a whole new way to think about it.
It is, and it opens up all these possibilities for how we might be able to interact with microvita in our environment.
Okay, so the Gandasarpa, is it giving off positive microvita or negative ones? I mean, it is a cobra after all.
Right, well, that's where it gets interesting. The source describes the Gandasarpa as being pretty harmless, even docile. They prefer to live in abandoned houses, and they love overripe bananas. The source even mentions people leaving out treats for these cobras.
Hold on, people are leaving snacks out for cobras. That's next level, living in harmony with nature.
It is, right. And it suggests that maybe these cobras aren't giving off those negative microvita. They might even be beneficial in some way.
So maybe not negative, but not necessarily positive either. Maybe just a neutral cobra roommate with a taste for bananas.
Yeah, it's possible. The source doesn't specifically say if the rice-like smell means it's positive microvita, but it does say that this type of cobra is not usually aggressive.
Interesting. It makes you think about all the fragrances we use every day, the perfumes and candles and stuff. Could we be accidentally attracting or like repelling certain microvita based on the scents we choose?
It's a great point, and the source does talk about that a little bit. It suggests that certain scents can definitely impact the types of microvita that are around us.
So maybe choosing natural fragrances over synthetic ones
Correct.
could be a way to create a more balanced, microvita environment in our homes.
It's something to think about. And it shows how connected the natural world is to these subtle energies that are shaping our lives.
This is incredible. Okay, what about that other creature, the Gandagokula, the one with the dessert-like smell?
Oh, yes, the Gandagokula. This one is really fascinating. It's described as having a very specific scent that actually attracts positive microvita.
Okay, so we're talking good vibes only with this one. What does it look
Correct.
like? Is it like a magical, dessert-scented unicorn?
Not quite a unicorn. It's actually described as a small, shy animal, kind of like a mix between a fox and a mole.
Ah, a tiny little sweet-smelling creature. That's cute.
They are, unfortunately, they're becoming really rare, which is sad.
Oh no, why is that? Is it like their habitat is disappearing or something?
The source doesn't say, but it does stress that it's really important to protect these animals and the special role that they play in the ecosystem. Maybe their numbers going down is a sign that the balance of microvita in the world is off.
That's a good point. I'm curious, how does their smell attract the good microvita? Is it like a beacon or something?
Well, the source explains that the Gandagokula's scent is similar to the aromas you get during certain spiritual practices, the kind of practices that are specifically for cultivating positive energy and bringing in those good microvita.
So it's like they're these walking, talking incense sticks. They're naturally giving off good vibes.
Haha, that's a great way to put it. It's a beautiful example of how nature can, reflect and even amplify those subtle energies.
This is amazing. It makes me wonder about what kind of impact our own inner state has on the types of microvita we're attracting. Like if we're always stressed and negative, are we basically like giving off a bad microvita smell?
That's an interesting question. The source does say that our internal state can affect the kind of smells we give off. And it emphasizes how important it is to keep a positive, balanced internal state, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us.
Okay, now I'm suddenly really self-conscious about how I smell. But this is all fascinating. It's like we're uncovering a secret language of scents and microvita.
That's right. And it's a language that's all about the interconnectedness of everything.
Okay, before we get too lost in the world of fragrant microvita, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, that idea that microvita can travel through ideas. That still blows my mind a little bit.
It is one of the most mind-bending aspects of all of this, isn't it? It really shows you how powerful our thoughts are.
So if I'm getting this right, if I have a positive thought, a thought that lifts me up, it's also sending out good microvita into the world, like a ripple effect of good vibes.
That's it. And on the other hand, if you're constantly thinking negative, fearful thoughts,
And then you're like a walking factory for bad microvita. Not a great look.
Well, let's not be too hard on ourselves. The important thing is that our thoughts have power, and not just in the way we normally think about. They can actually change the energy around us.
This is huge. It means that every thought we have, every idea we share, is potentially impacting the world on this microvital level. That's powerful, but also a little scary.
It is. It makes you think about, our responsibility to cultivate those positive, constructive thoughts. It's not just about feeling good. It's about making the world a better place.
So less doom scrolling and negativity, more focusing on ideas that inspire and uplift us. It's like a microvita call to action.
I love that. It's about choosing thoughts that line up with those positive microvita and spreading those good vibes as far as we can.
And this is also inspiring, but makes me wonder, what about people who are intentionally spreading harmful ideas? Are they like weaponizing negative microvita?
That's a disturbing thought, but the source does say that negative microvita can be used to manipulate and control people. It even connects them to things like conflict and other problems in society.
That's a little scary. It's like a microvita arms race or something.
Yeah, it's something to be aware of, for sure. But the good news is we're not powerless here. The source talks about the importance of thinking critically, questioning what we're told and being careful about the information we're taking in.
So don't just believe everything you see, especially online.
Exactly. It's about being careful, really looking at the information we're getting, and choosing to focus on the ideas that match our values.
And I'm guessing those positive, uplifting thoughts are a good place to start.
Definitely. Cultivating a positive mindset, Connecting with ideas that inspire us and sharing those good vibes with others, that's all part of it.
This is all so much bigger than I ever imagined. It's like we're getting a peek behind the curtain of reality and seeing this whole hidden world of Microvita at work.
I know, right? And we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more to learn and discover.
I know. I'm already ready to dig into more research on Microvita. But before we do, you mentioned Deveyonis last time. What are they exactly? And how do they fit into this whole Microvita picture?
Yes. The Deveyonis, they're a fascinating part of all this. Think of them as like evolved souls or maybe even clusters of positive microvita that can influence our lives in amazing ways.
Wait, so like Microvita spirit guides? This is getting really interesting.
Yeah, you could say that. And there are all these different kinds of Deveyonis, each with their own unique qualities and areas of influence.
Okay, I'm hooked. We have to dive into these Deveyonis and how they connect to all of this Microvita stuff.
Let's save that for part 3 of our exploration. It's going to be an amazing journey into the subtle realms of existence.
Can't wait. Until next time, keep those good vibes flowing and your minds open to all the amazing things in the unseen world. All right, we're back, and I'm ready to learn more about these Deveyonis. I'm still thinking about what we talked about last time, how smells and thoughts can carry Microvita. It's like there's this whole hidden world of energy all around us, and we don't even realize it.
It really is. And it seems like these Deveyonis are like masters of that energy. Remember, we talked about them as these evolved souls or maybe groups of positive microvita that can influence us in powerful ways.
Right, like Microvita meets mythology. It's so cool. You said there are all these different types of Deveyonis, each with their own special qualities. So who are these mysterious beings? How do they work in the world of Microvita?
Well, the source lays out a whole classification system for them, and it's really interesting. First up, we have the Gandharvas. They're all about creativity, art, and music.
So like the artistic Microvita, I'm already feeling more inspired. If they're the masters of creativity, does that mean like if I'm feeling stuck, I can just call on the Gandharvas for a boost?
That's a cool idea. The source does say that Gandharvas can inspire creativity and a love for art. They work through what's called sound inference, which makes sense since they're connected to music.
So maybe listening to good music could help me connect with those Gandharva vibes. Might have to put on my favorite playlist while I work.
It's worth a shot. Then there are the Kinaras. They're all about beauty and aesthetics.
The beauty gurus of the Microvita world. I wonder if they have any good skincare tips.
Actually, the source refers to the science of cosmetics as Kinaravity, so it seems like these Deveyonis were seen as guides when it came to beauty and adornment.
It's like they were the original influencers.
How do they work, though? Do they just, like, sprinkle Microvita glitter on everything?
That's a fun way to think about it. The source doesn't get into specifics like that, but it does say they work through form inference, so maybe they help us see beauty in different ways, like appreciating the beauty of the world around us.
I like that. So it's not just about surface level beauty. It's about appreciating beauty on a deeper level, the kind that touches your soul. Exactly. And then there are the Vijayadharas. They're like the brainy ones of the Deveyoni world, all about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding.
Okay, the smart ones. So if I'm having trouble understanding something complicated, or if I'm stuck on a research project, can I call on the Vijayadharas to give me an intellectual boost?
The source says that Vijayadharas can help guide and support those who are really looking for knowledge and want to grow intellectually. They work through what's called the light inference, illuminating our minds and helping us see things more clearly.
Okay, so it's like they're shining a light on the path of knowledge. I might need to meditate on that when I'm feeling stuck on something. You mentioned a story earlier about a student and Avijadhara. What was that all about?
Oh, yeah. This student was super stressed about an exam and felt overwhelmed studying for it. Then, out of nowhere, he hears this voice telling him to memorize specific lines from a poem. So he does, and guess what? Those exact lines showed up on the exam.
Oh, wow. That's incredible, like some kind of divine intervention. Sounds like you got a little Microvita assist from a friendly Vijayadhara.
It does, and it's a good example of how these Devyonis can guide and help us in unexpected ways, especially if we're open to it.
It's like having a team of cosmic tutors on our side. I love it. Okay, so we have the Gandharvas, the creative ones, the Kinaras, the beauty lovers, and the Vijayadharas, the wise ones. Are there any other types of Devyonis we should know about?
There are. The source also talks about the Vidihalinas. They're a bit different. They're described as souls who really want to be free from suffering.
Oh, wow. So, like, they're the seekers in the Devyoni world, always trying to reach a higher state of being.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And they're believed to create an environment that's perfect for spiritual practices.
That's really interesting. So maybe some places, or even groups of people, have more of those Vita Helena vibes, making them better for things like meditation or retreats.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Makes you wonder if we can sense those energy vibrations without even realizing it.
I know, right? Okay, but you also mentioned something about siddhas. What makes them different from the other devyonis?
Well, the siddhas are seen as the most evolved of all the devyonis. Remember that Yakini CD we talked about? The one who protected the professor and his family?
Oh, yeah, right, the Microvita guardian angel. Are all siddhas that powerful?
Well, the source explains that siddhas have reached a really high level of spiritual understanding and have these amazing abilities. They've basically mastered the language of Microvita.
This is where things get exciting. What kind of abilities are we talking about, like superpowers?
Yeah, the source mentions several. There's anima, which is the ability to shrink your psychic existence to a single point, allowing them to go through anything or travel huge distances.
So like Microvita teleportation, that's amazing.
Exactly. And then there's Lakima, the ability to make the mind incredibly light and free from worry and material concerns.
That sounds amazing, like the ultimate decluttering for your mind.
Right. And then Mahima, which is the ability to expand your consciousness to experience and understand vast amounts of knowledge.
Okay, my mind is blown. These abilities are incredible. Are there any more?
Oh yeah, there's more. There's Ishikva, the ability to control the elements. Vishichva, the power to influence others' minds. Prakamya, the ability to see things beyond our normal senses. Prapti, the power to make your desires reality. And Antarimitva, the ability to enter other people's bodies.
Whoa, wait a minute. This is starting to sound less like spirituality and more like straight up superpowers.
It's true. These abilities seem really extraordinary, almost supernatural, but the source makes it clear that they all come from spiritual growth and cultivating positive microvita.
So it's not about using these powers for your own benefit, but more like a natural outcome of following a spiritual path.
Exactly. And the source says that the most important power is omniscience, which is basically having complete knowledge and understanding of everything in the universe.
Wow, omniscience. That's like having the ultimate Microvita cheat code.
It's the ultimate goal, but even omniscience, the source says, can only be achieved through the grace of something bigger than ourselves, supreme consciousness, not just by collecting Microvita or developing these powers.
So it's not just about mastering the world of Microvita, but connecting with something even greater than that. It's about understanding that we're all connected to something much bigger than ourselves, and that our choices matter.
You put it perfectly. That's really the heart of what we've been talking about with Microvita. It's not just about science or spirituality. It's about understanding that everything is connected.
This has been an amazing exploration of Microvita. My mind is officially expanded.
It's been so great to explore all of this with you. I love how you've brought together the science and the spiritual, the practical stuff, and the deeper meaning of it all.
Have you ever felt a sudden shift in your mood, like a burst of inspiration out of nowhere, maybe even like a sense of foreboding that you couldn't quite place? What if, just what if, those feelings were influenced by forces we just can't perceive with our normal senses?
Well, that's exactly the territory we're stepping into with Microvita. We're talking subtle emanations of cosmic energy, the kind that permeate everything. They shape our physical realities and they shape our psychic realities. Think of them like tiny forces, even smaller than atoms, just constantly interacting and influencing the world all around us.
So like building blocks of, well, everything. I'm not sure I'm wrapping my head around that just yet.
Yeah. It is a huge concept, but you know what? We can think about things you're already familiar with. Think of it like atoms, right? They combine to form molecules and complex structures. Well, Microvita, they interact and combine too. And that influences the formation of everything around us. It's almost like a garden. You can think of positive Microvita as the sunshine, as the nutrients that promote growth and vitality.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. And I guess just like a garden, sometimes pests or diseases can affect things. So I'm guessing there are negative Microvita too.
Exactly. It's not about good versus evil or anything. It's more about the impact these Microvita have on us, on living beings. These negative Microvita, they can disrupt the natural harmony and even cause harm.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the articles mentions a specific example, the margosa tree, and specifically the Mahanimba variety. It's known for its strong, pungent smell, and it's used in some cultures for purification rituals. How does this tree tie into the idea of Microvita?
The margosa tree? Oh, it's a fascinating example of how we might be interacting with Microvita even without realizing it. That strong smell, especially in the Mahanimba variety, That's believed to actually repel harmful microvita. Think of it like the plant's natural defense mechanism.
So it's like the tree is creating its own little force field of positive microvita.
In a way, yeah, you could say that. It shows how scents can have an influence on these subtle energies around us. And it goes beyond just plants. I mean, think about it. You've probably felt it yourself. Certain smells instantly change your mood, right? Or they trigger a memory.
You're so right. It's funny. I'd never thought about it that way before. A whiff of fresh bread, bam, I'm happy. But a musty smell, that can make me feel uneasy.
Exactly. And some of these sources even suggest that those musty smells, the ones often associated with negativity, they might actually attract harmful microvita. And on the other hand, think of pleasant aromas like incense or certain flowers used in spiritual practices. Those are thought to attract positive microvita. It's about creating that positive environment.
This is where things get really interesting to me. If smells can affect these microvitas, do other things we do in our daily lives make a difference too?
Absolutely. This whole idea is saying we're not just passive recipients of these forces. We actively shape our own microvita landscape.
So we have a say in the kind of microvita we attract. That's kind of empowering, isn't it?
It is. The sources are pretty clear about how our thoughts, our actions, even spiritual practices, all of these can influence the microvita around us, just like tending a garden,
Yeah.
We can cultivate positivity within ourselves and our environment to attract those beneficial microvita.
Okay, so we've got some ideas on how to invite the good vibes in. But how do microvita actually affect us on a deeper level? I remember reading something about their role in the formation of carbon atoms.
Ah, yes, that's one of the most fascinating and honestly potentially revolutionary aspects of all this. Right now, science basically says carbon atoms are the building blocks of all life, at least as we know it.
Yeah, the whole carbon-based life forms thing.
Right. But what if there's another layer? What if it's not just the carbon itself? These sources, they're suggesting that it's actually the interplay of countless microvita that come together to form those carbon atoms in the first place.
So life doesn't just arise from carbon, it arises from the microvita that create the carbon. Whoa, okay, my mind is trying to catch up.
It's a big shift, no doubt. But just imagine the implications. What if life isn't just random chemical reactions? What if it's actually guided by these subtle, intelligent forces? And think about this. If we could understand how to work with those forces, the possibilities for enhancing human potential are enormous.
Okay, slow down. My brain is buzzing. What kind of possibilities are we talking about?
We're talking big stuff. The sources suggest we could potentially enhance our intellect, boost our physical abilities, even speed up our spiritual awareness. Think faster learning, stronger immune systems, tapping into that hidden creativity and intuition. It's like opening up a whole new world.
That's incredible. Didn't the articles also mention Siddha microvita, the ones that are supposed to be responsible for those spontaneous spiritual awakenings or major life changes? There was that story about the young man playing cricket.
Right, right. That story is a perfect example of how powerful positive microvita can be. This young man, just playing a game, suddenly feels this pull towards a higher purpose. It's like the Siddha microvita acted as a spark, waking up a potential that was already inside him. And what's really cool, what the sources emphasize, is that we can cultivate these positive microvita through the things we do, through our intentions.
So the more we focus on personal growth and spiritual development, the more likely we are to attract those transformative Siddha microvita.
It's like tuning ourselves to a higher frequency, exactly. And the sources, they don't stop there. They suggest that microvita might even be influencing things like the rise and fall of civilizations, the spread of new ideas, even the prevalence of diseases.
Mind-blowing. So we're not just talking about individual potential. We're talking about a more harmonious, spiritually awakened world.
That's the really exciting part of this. It means we can actively participate in shaping a better future, both for ourselves and for everyone else. But it all comes back to understanding these microvita, harnessing their power.
This has been eye-opening. There's a lot to unpack here. We still have so much to explore in these sources, right? I'm thinking about the whole discussion of kamarti, luminous beings that spiritual practitioners describe seeing.
You're right, there's so much more to uncover. The sources go deep into how microvita connect to the spiritual realm, and that's exactly where we're headed next. We'll pick it up in the next part of our deep dive. So we were talking about Kamorti, those luminous beings that some spiritual practitioners say they can see. It's a really interesting area where microvita theory overlaps with these spiritual experiences.
It really makes you wonder, are we talking about actual beings or just some kind of illusion? Could they be manifestations of positive microvita?
That's a question that has fascinated people for a long time. The sources are very clear that genuine Komorti experiences are not illusions. Not like, say, Chaya Pursa, which are basically just shadow figures caused by light playing tricks on us. These Kamotis are described as real beings, and they can even help and guide people on their spiritual paths.
Like that story in the sources about the woman who was protected by a Yaksani, right? Some
Okay.
kind of benevolent entity. It really makes you think maybe these unseen forces are more involved in our lives than we realize.
It really does, and this ties into a broader concept that the sources discuss, the idea of divayonis. These are positive microvita, each with their own special qualities. Some are associated with beauty, others with protection or guidance, and then there are siddhas, considered the highest form of divayonis. They can even initiate people into spiritual practices.
So it's not just like a general sense of good vibes. There's a whole system of these positive microvitas, each with its own powers and abilities.
Exactly. It's incredibly complex and fascinating, and that's where Gandharukminai comes into play. This is a specific type of positive microvita that can inspire people and lead them towards spiritual awakening.
Oh, like in that story about Nimai Pandit, the scholar who suddenly left everything behind to pursue spiritual truth. It almost seemed like something beyond his control was guiding him.
Right, and the sources say it wasn't random. They believe it was the influence of Gandharukminai drawing him towards his higher purpose. And what's even more interesting, the sources say that we can actually attract these transformative forces through our own actions and intentions.
So it goes back to that idea of cultivating positivity, aligning ourselves with spiritual growth. But we're not just talking about individual journeys here, are we? The sources also suggest that microvita can shape the world around us on a much larger scale.
That's a key point. Remember, this whole concept is about interconnectedness, not just between people, but with the entire universe. Our thoughts, actions, intentions, they all have a ripple effect. They influence the subtle energies around us, shaping the collective consciousness.
So when we choose positivity and spiritual growth, we're not just improving our own lives, we're contributing to a better world for everyone. That's a powerful thought.
It really is. This theory reminds us that we're not just bystanders in the face of whatever life throws at us. We can actively shape things, contribute to a more harmonious and spiritually awakened world. But that leads to the question, how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
That's a great question. The sources actually offer some practical advice, don't they?
They do. They emphasize the importance of surrounding ourselves with good company, immersing ourselves in uplifting art and literature, and engaging in practices like meditation. All of this helps to cultivate a positive inner environment.
It's like creating a microvita sanctuary, both within ourselves and in our surroundings.
Exactly. It's about consciously choosing things that support positive microvita and repelling those that might hold us back. Remember that analogy about tending a garden. We need to nurture our inner world just as carefully as we would a physical one.
That's a good reminder. But we can't just pretend the negative doesn't exist, can we? Those harmful microvitas are still out there. How do we deal with them?
You're absolutely right. We need to be aware of those negative influences and understand how they work. The sources talk about how negative microvita are drawn to negativity, both in our thoughts and in our environment. They also stress the importance of having a strong spiritual practice to counteract those negative effects.
So it's about finding balance, nurturing the positive, while also being mindful of and mitigating the negative.
Precisely. It's all about being mindful of the energy we're putting out into the world and making conscious choices that support our growth and well-being. It's not about obsessing over every little thing, but about developing awareness and making choices that align with our highest aspirations.
I'm starting to see how this idea of microvita can be so empowering. It suggests that we have more control over our lives and destinies than we think.
That's one of the most important takeaways from all of this. These sources remind us that we're not just a product of our circumstances. We have the power to shape our realities and create a more positive future.
This whole conversation has really been eye-opening. We've covered so much, from the subtle influence of smells to the powerful impact of positive microvita on our spiritual journeys. But there's still more to explore, isn't there? The sources also delve into the scientific implications of microvita.
Absolutely, and that's where we're going next. We'll explore how microvita could revolutionize our understanding of science, from cosmology to biology, and what it could mean for the future of humanity.
So far, we've really been diving deep into this world of microvita. We've talked about their influence on our personal lives and even how they could help create a more harmonious world. But I'm really intrigued by what you mentioned earlier about the sources diving into the scientific side of things. That's where it feels like things could get really groundbreaking.
You're absolutely right. This is where microveda theory really challenges us to think outside the box, scientifically speaking. Our current scientific models tend to view matter as basically inert, and life is seen as the result of random chemical reactions. But these sources are proposing something totally different. What if microvita, these subtle emanations of cosmic energy, are actually the driving force behind the formation of matter itself?
So instead of matter being the fundamental building block, it's actually microvita. Wow, that's a pretty radical shift in perspective.
It is. It suggests that at its core, everything in the universe is actually a manifestation of these intelligent forces. It's like discovering a whole new layer of reality underneath everything we thought we knew.
I can see how that would turn the scientific world upside down. But what would that mean for specific fields of science? How could microvita research change our approach to things like medicine or energy production?
The possibilities are really exciting. Let's take medicine, for example. The sources propose that a lot of diseases might actually be caused by imbalances or disruptions in microvita. So imagine, if that's true, being able to develop treatments that specifically target and neutralize those harmful microvita. We could be talking about a whole new era of healthcare.
That would be amazing. Instead of just managing symptoms, we could be addressing the root causes of illness at a much deeper level.
Exactly. And the potential benefits go way beyond just treating diseases. If we understood microvita, we could potentially boost our natural healing abilities and strengthen our immune systems. It's about achieving health and well-being at the most fundamental level.
This is starting to sound like something out of science fiction. But are scientists actually taking this theory seriously? Is there any real research being done to explore these ideas?
Microvita research is definitely still in its infancy. The sources acknowledge that, but they're calling for scientists from all fields to really look into this theory with open minds. The potential for breakthroughs is huge. We could see massive changes in medicine, agriculture, even energy production.
It sounds like we're on the brink of a whole new scientific revolution, all driven by the exploration of these unseen forces.
It's definitely a possibility. And the sources emphasize that it's not just about scientists doing research in labs. This is something we can all be a part of. Anyone who's curious can explore these ideas and contribute to our understanding of microvita.
I love that. It feels like we've come full circle. We started by talking about how microvita influence our personal lives, and now we're talking about their role in shaping the universe.
It's been quite a journey, and it highlights a key point from all of these sources. We are not just passive observers in all of this. We have the power to participate, to learn, to explore, and to shape our own realities through understanding and working with these profound concepts.
This deep dive has really given me a new perspective on the world. What's the one thing you'd want our listeners to take away from all of this, from our exploration of microvita?
The most important message is that we're not powerless. We have so much more agency than we often realize. By cultivating positivity, engaging in spiritual practices, and making conscious choices that align with our highest aspirations, we can harness the power of microvita to create a brighter future for ourselves and for generations to come.
It's a message of hope, of empowerment, and a reminder that we are all connected to something much larger than ourselves. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the world of microvita. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those positive vibes flowing.